If you own the X3, X4 or One RS 1-inch and are thinking about upgrading to the brand new Insta360 X5 for 360 video, this video is for you. Because while there's been heaps of hype around the X5 during launch, a lot of reviews are focusing more on why 360 cameras are awesome, which they are, but not so much whether it's actually better than what we already have. So in this honest, unbiased and unsponsored video, I'll compare these 4 cameras to see which one really is the best for 360 video. Now, if you do own an Insta360 camera, but you're still struggling to get the awesome shots you see other creators making, inside my 360 Video 101 course, I share the entire process for getting awesome looking shots step by step, from shooting to editing to reframing, so you can go from total beginner to 360 video pro in no time. If you want to learn more, just follow the link below. So does the X5 live up to all the hype it's been getting? The short answer is yes, but first I want to show you some side-by-side comparisons so you can see exactly how it compares to the previous generation of Insta360 cameras that also got similarly crazy high levels of hype around their releases. So based on the evidence I'm about to show you, you be the judge. Now, I'm not going to be doing any color correction on any of these shots. Everything you're about to see was taken straight out of the camera and shot in auto exposure. I'd suggest watching this video in full screen so you can see these shots properly. And here they are, straight out of the camera. All of them look pretty good in bright daylight and seem to be capturing enough detail in the shadows and highlights to be passable. However, I will say the 2 shots on the left look a bit more washed out compared to the 2 on the right. They have much better contrast. Also, they seem to be flaring a lot less around the lens area. Of the 4, I'd say the X3 looks the worst because it just looks a little bit washed out compared to the others. And the X5 in this shot, at least, in my opinion, looks the best because it's got the most amount of detail in the clouds, the best dynamic range, and also my face seems to be lit up the best of all 4 with the X5. How do they perform for sharpness? Good question. Well, here I took a super wide angle shot of all 4. And looking at them from this angle, it seems like the X3 and the 1-inch are the darkest, while the X4 and X5 seem to have the best sharpness around the rocks of all 4. Now let's punch in closer to uncomfortably close. You should never go in this close when reframing 360 videos, but I did it to really illustrate what's going on in those finer details. And what I'm seeing with the X3, X4 and 1-inch is a lot of noise in those darker rock areas that is really obvious even during the day. I mean, look at that with the X3. And then look across to the X5 where there's barely any noise going on at all. Then when I compare the X4 and X5, I'd say the X5 looks a little bit sharper when you look around my body. It's just a little bit cleaner, as well as the detail here in the rocks and rock pools just seems a bit nicer with the X5 than it does the X4, X3 and 1-inch. So I think we can agree the X5 wins for sharpness. What about dynamic range? Well, here they are side by side, and 3 of these cameras have an inbuilt HDR mode called Active HDR, which I've used with this comparison here. The One RS 1-inch does not have anything like this, so I obviously didn't use it, but I'll say that all 4 have very good dynamic range in an outdoor bright light situation like this, and this is more than usable. However, again, my face is lit up so much better on the X5 than the other 4, where it's either too dark or too washed out here. Just lacking the contrast in my sunglasses and hat that I'm getting here with the X5. So yeah, the X5 legit looks better than all 4 when it comes to dynamic range and the detail you get in both the highlights and shadows. I'd say here my sunglasses look the sharpest with the X5 and 1-inch, which seems to perform better with objects closer to the camera. Next, I put the 4 cameras in the darkest area I could find. It was in this little cave here at Maroubra Beach where it was super dark inside and crazy bright outside. So I knew this would be a good test to push these cameras to the extreme. Here's what they look like in normal auto exposure. As you can see, it's really blown out and very high contrast. The X3 looks absolutely terrible, I'm sorry to say, but it has not done a good job at all, whereas the other 3 are all passable, with the X5 and One RS 1-inch being the best of the 4. However, now with with active HDR turned on for the X3, X4, and X5, suddenly we've got details in the sky that we weren't seeing before with the left 3 cameras, and the best of the bunch seems to be the X4. As you can see, you've got a lot more blue sky poking through there than you do with the X3 or X5, and the 1RS 1-inch obviously doesn't have any high dynamic range mode, so you see nothing. On the flip side though, if you look at the inside of this cave, I'd say it looks the best with the X5. That contrast is really nice, it's captured really crisply, and I'd say it's done a really good job at exposing the shadows here, which it seems to have prioritized over the highlights. If you compare the top of the cave here, the contrast and definition is better with the X5 than it is with any of the other cameras. However, I'd probably say that the X4 won this one just due to those highlights being brought back. What about in low light? Well, these results were very interesting. Here the 4 cameras are, and this area is pretty well lit by lamp posts. As you can see, it's not too challenging for any of the cameras, and they are all definitely usable. Again, if you're watching in full screen, you'll probably notice a whole bunch of noise here with the X3 and motion blur. That is much worse than the other 4, and I'm also seeing it a bit here with the X4. I'd say the X5 and 1-inch are performing the best. In fact, the 1-inch seems to be slightly sharper, at least in this type of lighting scenario. Now, if I pause this here, again, you'll see the brickwork and the fence are pretty sharp with both the X5 and 1-inch, whereas you've lost so much of that detail here with the other 2. So yeah, in this type of lighting, absolutely the X5 and 1-inch are the winners. Now, when we take this comparison into really low light, this is when everything changes. Here they are, and 3 of them, you can't even see my face at all, whereas the X5 somehow is still able to show everything. While it's not super sharp, it is very much visible, and this is really low light here. There's like almost nothing lighting my face aside from the odd street light, but especially the X3 and X4 are really struggling here. And when I go into this little area that was completely pitch black, the X5 still has been able to capture that detail, albeit quite grainy, but it still has, whereas the other 3 are basically unusable in this level of light. So I'd say if you're in an area that is so dark that any kind of shot is a win, then the X5 absolutely has got your back here. It's not going to be the absolute best video quality, but you'll at least get something. So if you shoot at nighttime a lot, the X5 absolutely will be an upgrade, since it has a brand new nighttime mode called Pure Video that the other 3 don't have, and this is what is responsible for this fantastic result. So for low light shooting, the X5 absolutely hands down wins. Here they are side by side for slow motion. While the X3 and 1-inch don't really have the best settings for slow motion, I still slowed all 4 of them down to shoot at the slowest frame rate they could go, and as a result, these 2 cameras look pretty terrible, but the X4 and X5 are doing a great job at capturing this slow motion. I'd say especially the X5 when it comes to the actual motion. However, I also noticed that it's sharper on the X4 when shooting in slow motion. As you can see, it almost looks like it's trying to smooth my skin or something, but I don't have any palm lines here, whereas I do here. So I guess that's just a small consideration, but just having that 4K 120 with the X5 is a really nice thing to have, especially when 4K 120 isn't really 4K. It's actually a 4K sphere reduced down to one direction, which is roughly a third of that, which is why, especially for slow motion, you need as much resolution as possible. So I'm going to say this one's a tie between the X4 and X5. Both of them are really good slow-mo cameras. Now, both the X4 and X5 offer a 60 frames per second option, which makes movement a bit more lifelike. If you're shooting action and you want it to feel really real, this is a good option to have, and that's not available on the X3 and 1-inch. And the main difference I've noticed between the X4 and X5 is with the X5, you can use both 60 FPS and active HDR simultaneously, whereas with the X4, you can't. Now, how well do these 4 cameras stitch together? With all 360 cameras, there is a seam line in between the 2 lenses, and often when you're out shooting, you accidentally point it towards you. And sometimes this can result in some Picasso-looking videos. So this is why it's really important to make sure the camera you're using doesn't have any major stitching issues. And when I put the 4 cameras side by side here and put my face uncomfortably close to the stitch line, I'd say that the 3X cameras do a good enough job at this. It's not perfect, and keep in mind that I am going very close here. The only one that I noticed had an issue was the 1RS 1-inch. As you can see, because it's got a thicker body, when you come closer, you start seeing this kind of thing with my nose where it's like a double image, and this is going to be quite noticeable for anything that happens close to the camera. So I give the 3X cameras a pass here, despite squishing my face a bit at close range. This is a sound test in a noisy environment. I've got the ocean to one side, which is very loud. I've got a plane flying overhead. I've got noise on the other side of the cameras. And this is a really good test of how the microphones on all 4 cameras perform. Here's what it sounds like from the Insta360 X3. Here's the microphone from the X4. Here's the 1RS 1-inch inbuilt audio. And finally, the Insta360 X5 inbuilt audio. So from listening to that audio, it's pretty obvious that the X5 sounds the best. While it's not perfect, it can be recovered pretty well using the inbuilt noise reduction of Insta360 Studio. Here's what it sounds like from the Insta360 X3. Here's the microphone from the X4. Here's the 1RS 1-inch inbuilt audio. And finally, the Insta360 X5 inbuilt audio. Now I know this isn't 360, but 3 of these cameras have a dedicated single lens mode where you can use them like a traditional action camera. So the 3 on the left are in that single lens mode, and the 1RS 1-inch is just reframed in one direction. And looking at these 4 shots, they all look good. Again, they're all perfectly usable. To my personal taste, I think the X5 looks the best, but they're all very similar. So if you do intend on using the camera in one direction only and want to do this, then I wouldn't upgrade necessarily just for this. Now, in the interest of being totally objective in this comparison, now I'm going to jumble up the shots and not tell you which one is which. Here they are. I've got 4 cameras side by side, and which of these 4 looks the best to you? Is it number 1, number 2, number 3, or number 4? And here's what they were. Yes, the X5 was the first one, which to me looks the best, and I also wasn't minding the 1RS 1-inch and X4, with the X3 looking far inferior to the others. But I will say here as well that when you look at these 4 side by side, if you were to use these without doing any color correction whatsoever and you're comparing these 4, to me the only one that looks ready to go is the X5, since the X3 would need a lot more contrast and dehazing as well as a slight color improvement. The 1-inch needs the contrast to be brought down, the shadows up on my face, and the X4 needs a bit more contrast and detail around my face, as well as maybe the colors enhanced slightly. So this is all just something to think about if you're someone that doesn't like doing a lot of editing and you want a camera that looks good straight out of the camera, then to me this makes the X5 the obvious choice. So with that in mind, it's time to answer the question, should you upgrade to the X5? Well, here are my personal thoughts. So from looking at these side by sides, I was really pleasantly surprised at how much of an improvement it was over the previous generations. Usually when you think about upgrades from camera to camera, like GoPros and other types of camera, it's usually just such a small spec bump and you don't really see that much from camera to camera. However, all of those comparisons were noticeable, and the X5 won every single one aside from the cave shot. And I'd say the biggest surprise as well is that the X5 outperformed the 1RS 1-inch, which has 2 1-inch sensors and big Leica lenses, which you would think would beat the X5, but it didn't. I think the main reason comes down to the resolution of 6K versus 8K, and the X5 sensor is now getting a lot closer to that of the 1-inch. So with a good sensor combined with high specs, I think the X5 has edged it out, meaning that if you do own a 1-inch, yes, it would make sense to upgrade to the X5. Not only is it better at 360 video, but it was also better at 360 photography based on the comparisons I did in my last video. I think it goes without saying that the X5 is way better than the X3, and this is the most obvious upgrade of the lot, because again, the X5 beat the X3 in literally every single way. If you own the X4, however, and you're thinking about upgrading to the X5, I'd probably say don't. You don't need to, because it really is good enough and close enough to the X5. Aside from low light, where there was obviously a really big upgrade there, I think for 95% of situations you're shooting in, you're still going to get great results with the X4. And to me, these two are just too similar to make this one an obvious upgrade. So if you own an X4, I'd say wait until the X6 comes out, unless you really liked what you saw with the side-by-sides. Now, regardless of whether you decided to upgrade to the X5 or not, if you own an Insta360 camera and want to learn how to create amazing shots with it, including which gear to use for best results, which camera settings to use to make your shots look awesome, and how to edit mind-blowing effects in seconds. Inside my 360 Video 101 course, I teach you everything you need to know to create 360 videos with confidence, no matter which level you're currently at. If you want to learn more, just follow the link below. Now, if you're sold on the X5, I'll also link it below. Anyone that follows my link will get a free lens replacement kit. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I will be releasing one more review of the X5 next week, because I really want to take the time to test it properly and not rush something out on launch day. So subscribe and stay tuned, because that video is coming really soon. Now, to the one person in the comments who said,
"You didn't include the Kucam Ultra. This video is so biased."
I know I didn't include it, and the reason is I don't own it. I am going to try and get my hands on one. However, I just wanted to focus this video on the camera that 98% of you currently own, which is the 3 I compared the X5 with. However, if you are interested in the Kucam 3 Ultra, let me know down below and I will consider covering it. So now that you know how the X5 performs for 360 video, next you might be curious to know how it performs for photos. Well, in this video here, I'll compare it with its other top competitors to see how well it performs for virtual tours if you're also considering the X5 for 360 photography.